Hey guys, thank you very much for joining me today. Happy New Year to every single one of you. Thank you for all the support, the kind messages, everything that you guys do and give back to me is something that I appreciate and don't ever tell you all enough. So I just want to make sure that you all know that I'm on your side and I appreciate every single piece that comes back towards me, which is one of the reasons why I'm doing this video today. So I just want to say, hey, Kevin, good to see you, man. Hopefully you had a good New Year's. Lewis, Happy New Year. Vanity Shape. This guy is full of information. You guys have heard me say this before. I just love this guy because of how technical he is. Thank you for the support and for joining. I know it's late where you're at. And Gear Focus, always nice to see you, man. Really appreciate you guys too. In case you guys don't know, Gear Focus is one of the most convenient and easy ways to sell and buy gear, and no, they are not sponsoring this video. I just really love using them because it has made my life and going through, selling gear that I'm not using super easy. And that's just, I really appreciate that. So, yeah, Lewis, I am using the 24mm f1.4, I think. It might be 1.8, I don't remember. But I'm using the Canon EOS R5 for this live stream. So really quick, here's the backstory. So this video is a little bit selfish, but before we do that, cheers, because this is a wind down. I'm gonna try to do more wind downs consistently this year. Assuming that we're all healthy and that I'm somewhere where the internet works, I plan on doing this. Randall, good to see you, man. Okay, so here's the backstory and why I'm saying that this is going to be a little bit selfish. I took on a project where I am effectively being handed footage and I have to make something great out of the footage that someone is handing me. They either hired or utilized an individual to do multiple interviews on location throughout this workspace. And I can't tell you guys or show you because I'm under an NDA. So you'll just have to use, your imagination as I'm talking here. But ultimately, in just looking at his footage, I realized that what is maybe second nature to a lot of us who have been doing this for a bit of time, someone didn't learn it on YouTube or in college or whatever it is that, however they learn their knowledge, they have skipped over a whole bunch of things that are really, really, really critical and important when it comes to interviews. And that's really what I want to talk about. I want to talk about, and some of it might be basic, right? Because we have a lot of people that follow this community that are at all different levels in their career, in their, professional standing, in what they've done, what they've shot, what they produce, and so on and so forth. So some of the information is going to seem super, super basic, but rest assured, someone is making these types of mistakes every single day because I have 1.5 terabytes worth of interview footage that has a lot of these mistakes. So I want to go through the do's and the don'ts, but I want to make this interactive where if you have something else to add, you can leave a comment, right? Or type it into the chat. But if you are comfortable and you want to jump on my live stream and you want to be with me so that you can get your piece, your articulation on whatever you want to contribute out, I will post the link and you all can join in. Because there's absolutely no way that I'm going to be able to cover every single thing that, someone should know or think about and plan for in this live stream. And every situation is a little bit different, which adds to the complexity of the whole ordeal, which is why as filmmakers, we're always solving problems and always learning. So let's get started. One of the first do's, so I'm going to call this the do's. When you show up to do an interview, your mindset needs to be that it is your job as the guy that is showing up to make that person look the best that they possibly can. And the way to accomplish this, and I'm not talking about just beauty, right? Like I'm not just talking about don't give them 3 eyes or something. That's not what I'm saying. When I say make them look the best that they can is particularly in the corporate space. Most people that you will interview, and by the way, all of us who are in the industry, who work, whether it be in videography or cinematography or in commercial production, which is kind of what I do, you will end up interviewing someone. Probably a lot more than some of the maybe more fun stuff to do. Interviews are a part of what we do. And we make people look good by educating them and being confident and understanding what our role is. So if you are more than a one-man band, then there is someone, a producer, someone who is working either directly with the client that has already managed the client's expectations, gave them a rundown of how things are going to work, then they introduce you, and you should introduce yourself. You should say, hey, this is who I am, this is what I'm going to do, and this is the role that I'm going to play in your interview. You should always let people know, because you letting them know about you is going to relax them and have them not focus on the fact that you're going to stick a microphone and a camera in front of their face so that they can answer whatever questions you're going to throw their way. Creating that human connection is essential. It's something that, again, makes it so that your life as the person who is shooting the interview, and especially if you're going to then also edit the interview, becomes easier because you are helping them along. They don't work in that industry. If you're working with talent who is used to being in front of cameras, that's very different, right? So those types of interviews generally are very different. I'm talking more like the 1 to 3 man band type of interviews that you might find yourself in when working in the corporate space or in the commercial space. So again, number 1, be confident and introduce yourself, make that human connection so that you can make them look the best that they possibly can look. That's the number 1 thing. Number 2 is literally go over the game plan, right? If you don't have a producer or you don't have someone to help you get that communication across, let them know, hey, we're going to be doing this interview. The location was chosen, whether it be your office or in this space, and this is where I'm going to set my camera 1 or my A cam, my B cam. Know that I'm going to be going through a series of questions. If this is a corporate thing, they likely have seen the questions. So let them know, hey, we're going to go through the questions that you've already seen. If you took notes and you need to refer back to your notes, you're going to have the opportunity. If at any point you feel like you want to rephrase your answer or anything else, don't worry about it. It's going to be fine. You get through the answer the way that you want to answer, and it's going to be my job to make sure that you feel comfortable with whatever you said on camera. So you go through these things, right? Another thing that I believe people should do, and for whatever reason people don't do, is you should talk to them about some of your own prep, right? So we're going to take 30 seconds of silence. So the cameras are going to be rolling, but we want no noise at all, and that's called natural sound. So we want to capture natural sound so that we can get a sense of the space that we're doing this interview in. Obviously for you, as the guy shooting the interview, that is going to give you two things. One, natural sound of the space that you're shooting in, so that you can fill in gaps in case you need to cover it up with B-roll or there's something that gets messed up. The second thing that it's going to allow you to do is it's going to give you a clean room tone feed, so that if you have to do noise reduction, you can use that 10, 15, I like to do 30 seconds because it helps the algorithm in the software that I use clean up audio better. But it allows you to then use that clip to allow the software to learn, so that you can then isolate their voice without removing the space noise. And we can talk about sound layering in a different video, but just that's something that's really important. So making sure that people know, hey, the camera's going to be rolling, which is going to take a little bit of time to get some natural sound out of the space, and it's just going to bring your video to life. It's going to bring your interview to life. So don't worry about it. I'll say, moment of silence. And when it's over, I'll say, okay, we can start rolling. Let them know what is happening so that they don't have to fill in the gaps with whatever they're imagining is happening. You don't want the person that you're interviewing ever to feel insecure or lose confidence. So that's really critical and important. If you're going to put a lavalier on them, explain to them, this is what we're doing, this is where the lavalier will be located, this is how we're going to route the lavalier cord, and this is how we want you to store it in a pocket, so that they know exactly what's happening, right? And if you need to touch someone, make sure you ask them, is it okay if I route this lavalier cord for you, or are you comfortable enough doing it yourself? And if it's a female, well, it doesn't matter, male or female, you need to ask for permission before you put your hands on anyone, so that they know you're professional, right? The last thing you would ever want to do is just hand someone a lav and expect them to know where you want it positioned. That's, again, a different topic for a different conversation. But where the lav is mounted is based on what someone is wearing and where your camera is going to be positioned. Things that, you should take into account. Let's see. After you've set the expectation, you've given them sort of a roadmap of why you're there and what you're going to be doing, you then need to make sure that you have your content ready. The last thing you need to do is to take your client, the person who you're interviewing, out of their headspace by asking them if they have a copy of the questions that you're supposed to be asking during the interview. That's a very big amateur move, and one that could get you fired or get them to never call you back, right? You should have everything ready. You should have an extra copy, so that if it's not on your phone or in your tablet, or if you actually printed it, that you could hand it to the client and say, is there anything you'd like to review? Is there anything you'd like this to be phrased differently to help you answer your questions? Those are, again, the dialogue, the human connection that you want to make before you start rolling. Very critical and important, and you end up with something that looks a lot better in the end. Let's see. So we talked about natural sound, exposure. So this is going to sound super silly, because if someone hired you to do an interview, you should understand exposure. But more importantly than understanding exposure, because the last thing you need to do is underexpose someone's skin, right? You're going to introduce problems for yourself. And if you overexpose, I mean, unless you're shooting on an Arri Alexa or a high-end red camera, you're going to run into problems if you overexpose people's skin. And even with the Arri Alexa and high-end Red cameras, you have the opportunity to destroy people's skin by overexposing. Okay, with that out of the way. Exposing isn't only about making sure that the talent has the correct exposure for what you're capturing, but it's also that you understand contrast and light ratios. If you are working in a corporate space, and let's pretend that this is my home office, but let's pretend that this is a corporate office where I'm working. And the exposure on my face is the same as the exposure in the background. There is no separation, and no amount of bokeh is going to help you create separation. There isn't a lens in the world that is going to do you justice by helping you fix an exposure and contrast problem. Again, deeper subject, and if there's any interest, we could certainly talk about that in a different episode, a different future, because there's a lot of things to get through here. Let's see. So after you understand your light ratios, the next biggest thing in helping your client look the best that they possibly can is understand framing. So I've seen in this project, I've seen a lot of clips where just about every single response to the question, the person is looking like this. This creates disconnection from the person who is viewing the content because you've never established an eye line. There's nothing wrong with having a cutaway camera. And in fact, I'll get to that later on in my little speech here. But your A-cam should strive to establish an eye line. And if the interviewer is not going to be in the clip, in the take, in the final edited piece, then it is important that the interviewee or the person answering the questions establishes some sort of connection with the audience. And you can only do that by allowing them to speak into the camera or towards the camera, even if it's ever so slightly, like I'm doing right now. I am still facing the camera, but I'm looking at the camera's grip instead of the camera's lens. Now I'm looking at the camera's lens. And now I'm looking at the camera's monitor. This still is way better than this. This is garbage unless it's a cutaway shot. And either of these are much better at establishing a connection for your client and whatever their message is to their audience, right? I mean, you would think that that makes sense. Another thing, when it comes to framing, what's in the shot? What's in the frame? These are very strange times. We're dealing with COVID, as you all know, as everybody here knows. And hand sanitizer makes it onto just about every office, at least every office that I've been to in the last year at this point. For whatever reason, the labels on some of these hand sanitizers have bright red or orange or neon blue in the label. And it okay, so apparently my camera decided it was going to take a nap. So sorry about that. Hopefully everybody can hear me. It looks like you can. So good. All right, so maybe make sure that even if you're shooting shallow, like I'm shooting pretty shallow right now, right? And you can tell that that's my gaming system, and you can tell that I have my YouTube channel set up on this LG display back here. And you can see that on Bert's desk over there are some pictures and stuff. You still can make it out even though I'm shooting shallow. So consider that. Maybe remove the object that is offensive to the frame so that it doesn't become a distraction. Because now you've just compounded the problem of shooting the entire interview like this, where you're getting a profile shot of the person, and the only other thing that people can focus on is the hand sanitizer. That's horrible. And it isn't just hand sanitizer, right? It could be a coffee cup. It could be anything that is off-brand or removes people from what they should be focusing on. That is another critical thing. Regarding framing again, when I shoot interviews, I like to use this zero tilt, which really means that my eye level is in line with the sensor of the camera in the middle of the lens. That allows me, and I say me, but it allows the person that I'm interviewing to, again, create that connection with the individual who is consuming the content. Because they are not looking up at them or looking down at them, they are interacting with them. And in the corporate space, just about every one of those, it is better when it is in fact zero tilt. And again, another bigger subject that we can cover later if there is enough interest. Lens choices. So in this office space, I know that I have limited space, right? I don't have 75 feet behind me. I'm confined, which means I need to then make a decision on a lens that is going to allow me to not create or give the person any kind of distortion when it comes to their face or the perspective of what the lens is able to capture. Which then also means you need to sort out how it is that you're going to frame things. Because wide angle lenses not only have distortion on the edges, but the perspective, I mean, look at how big my hand looks. Based on where I'm at the edges, and then it begins to come and look a little bit more normal. The telephoto lenses have a pinhole type of distortion. So don't show up to an interview with just a lens. And this is why zoom lenses are so popular when it comes to interviews, because they give you the flexibility of a wide range of focal lengths in one single lens. I personally shoot every single interview on prime lenses. It makes my life easier. They're sharper, they're better, they're more detailed, and it allows me to control my image the way that I want to control it, instead of negotiate with a zoom. And if you're working with photography lenses, then understand that you changing the zoom requires that you double check your focus. And yes, I get that there are lots of cameras that have terrific focus, but sometimes double checking saves your butt. And again, these are all things that I've seen in some of this footage that I've inherited on the project that I'm about to deliver here next week. All right, did I talk about Headroom? Keep that consistent, right? If it's a series, or if there's more than one person who is going to be in the final output or the final project, and one person has a lot of headroom and the other person has no headroom, they're being crowded, then that was a mistake. And that's something that kind of requires you to be a filmmaker and pay attention to your craft. So just keep headroom in mind. White balance. Just about every single corporate office is They use fluorescent light bulbs, which are fine. Most of them have diffusion in them, so shadows are not, they're not totally horrible, but their color rendition is bad. It is horrible. And there's nothing worse than horrible lights hitting skin tones that you then will have to deal with in post. And again, we're trying to make everybody look the best that they possibly can. So if you don't have one of these, right, that allows you to measure accurately color temperature in the space so you can try to match or gel your lights to get you to some sort of uniformity, then do yourself a favor and use a color checker. And if you think color checkers are too expensive, understand that they will save you. And you only have to buy them once if you take care of them. And they last you for years, years and years and years. And there is nothing better when you have to match multiple cameras or multiple days of shooting or shooting in multiple spaces than ensuring that you use the color checker in each and every single one of the locations before the first take. It will save you. So consider the color checker. I use it to this day, every time, regardless of the type of project that I'm working on. And it has saved me. I promise you it has. All right. Audio. This is going to open up a little bit of a can of worms for me, because I don't want to put anybody down. And when I say anybody, I'm talking about brands, right? But here very recently, we saw Rode announce a new microphone. And some people on YouTube, of course, when they launched or they lifted the embargo, they allowed them to create their videos talking about how awesome and wonderful these little tiny microphones are. I'm going to tell you, do not believe the hype, do not believe the BS. Don't buy cheap microphones. Don't choose or skimp out on your audio. Don't ignore how much audio helps make your client look their best and be their best. Cheap microphones will yield you cheap results. Those Rode Video Mic Go's or the Video Mic Go 2s, they might get the job done in a pinch, but that should not be your primary lavalier system. Rent it if you can't afford it, is basically what I'm saying here. Don't use cheap microphones. Do not use, obviously, the camera's internal microphone. Don't mount a microphone on the camera and expect the camera audio to be great. It's a recipe for failure. So don't do it if you can avoid it. And if you're working with a corporate client and you can't afford it, then suggest to them an equipment list that they should provide to you to get that done. That's how strongly I feel about this, because there's only so much you can do in post when you know, way back in the coding days, we used to say garbage in equals garbage out. So you capture garbage audio, you can only clean it up so much, it's still garbage audio. And that's very, very true. Understand the space that you're going to be working in. Nothing helps mute some of the reverb in a space better than moving blankets, if you can't afford the sound blankets that cost a little bit extra. Put one underneath the seat where someone is talking. Put one on either side of the camera that you're using so that you don't get backwards reflections coming into your microphone. Think about your audio, think about the space, and consider what is going to allow you to get a better result. Let's see. Lighting. So we talked about lighting and light ratios. Create separation through lighting, and sometimes it's easiest if you just turn off all the lights and then see what each one of the lights is actually doing. That might be a good way, for you to focus. In interviews, typically the subject is the only thing that matters, but if there's something else that's relevant, then understand that if it's not being lit, then it's not in the shot, right? Anything that is not purposely being hit with light intentionally becomes not important. And that's true in cinematography, that's true in interviews, that's true across any work that you're going to do. If you're going to use movement during your interview, then don't rely on handheld movement unless you have proper stabilization. And what I mean by that is something that can repeat the move without changing the orientation in any way, so that if you need to retake something, you can repeat it. Handheld DSLR moves that are motivated by nothing other than you thinking, oh, how cool is it if I start aiming the camera at the plant and then I end up with the person that is going to be answering the question and use that as a B-roll shot. It's a garbage shot. It's not good. There was no reason why you would do that. So here's probably the hardest thing that a lot of people that are going to be one-man band shows or young guys that are starting out will have to deal with. But once they realize it, life gets easy. Always shoot with 2 cameras. Always. And if you have the right budget, then shoot with 3 cameras. Because 2 from a fixed position or 1 from a fixed position, another one, say, on a slider that is traveling over time, and having the freedom to fly one, like, easy rig or something, to get, critical moments when someone might be, I don't know, clutching their hands or showing emotion. That's what makes an okay interview a terrific interview. And now the last thing that I want to say about interviews is if you're doing this by yourself and you're the guy asking the questions, or you're the individual asking the questions, then explain to the person that you're asking that do something like this. I'm going to ask you a series of questions, right? So for example, I'm going to ask you, hey, what's your name and title? If you would please take a moment, do like a silent 3 count. Take a moment, take a deep breath, and then respond using my question in your response. I would really appreciate it. So for example, if I say, please introduce yourself and let me know what your job title is here. My name is Carlos Quintero, and I am the creative director at Media on Cue. And once they finish answering, you're not having a 2-way dialogue conversation. You need to mentally and purposefully give them time to breathe. Give yourself room to edit. In other words, as soon as someone finishes talking, don't say, great, that was great, that sounded awesome. No, be professional. Once you have a little bit of break, then you can say, okay, we're moving on to the next question. Or if you want to compliment them, you can, but just keep focused on what is going to move the project forward. Okay, as the sun is going down, my white balance is turning to garbage. I wonder if I can I change it? I don't know. Let me see if I can do something here because it's bothering me. A little bit better. Whatever. Sun's going down. It's that time of day. Then always have the last question of your interview be, is there anything else you'd like to say or add? And then be quiet. Don't say anything. Let them think. Even if it takes them 15 or 30 seconds to think about something or longer, let them think and let them come back. You stay quiet and you let them say whatever they want to say. And I guarantee you, more often than not, you're going to get some very useful nuggets that are going to improve the quality of your interview and set you apart from everybody who is pretending to be a filmmaker and just going out, setting up a tripod shot and trying to be buddies with the person that is on the other side or the person that is being interviewed. It's the quickest way to fail. You don't want to be that person. And that's what I got. That's what I wanted to say. So hopefully this was useful for some people. I'm going to look at the comments really fast here. And if anybody has questions or wants to jump in, I'll post the link and you guys can join. So let's see here. It looks like we got a conversation between Lewis and Vanity Shape that has been going on. That's awesome. Okay, so I totally agree. Randall, very, very good point here. Let's see. I don't see any questions for me, which is good. And good for all of you, because then you guys can start your weekend and I can take another sip of wine. Okay, awesome. There aren't any questions. We got 23 people that joined the live stream today. I think that is really awesome. I appreciate you all. Let's do it again next week. So I'm going to try to shoot for a time where I'm not broadcasting at the same time that some of my friends are. I totally screwed up today because Scott was live streaming. I love to participate in his live streams and like hear him out. And I scheduled it when he was on. That was a mistake on my part. So I apologize for that. Again, I don't see here. Oh, here we go. Let's see. My question. How do you present to the moment instead of chasing the next gear purchase? How do you stay present in the moment? For me, it's simple. If something is making me money, then I'm going to keep using it. And if it isn't, or if it's stopping me from being able to accomplish something, then I'm going to find a way to replace it. So these days, I don't buy gear just to buy gear. This is the reason why we have 3 Komodos and a Monstro. And that's what we use, because that's what allows us to move quickly, effectively, and produce repeatable results across all of our clients. So if a new camera comes out, like V Raptor, for example, yeah, it's a great camera, but until I need it, it's not going to join our arsenal. So I think that that's really important. Let's see, Randall, what do you recommend when the client's audio is unusable? A reshoot? I know, that sucks. But here's the worst part, right? So, for example, the project I'm working on, I'm going to do the best that I can to produce the best piece that I can with what I have. But if it's horrible, I'm going to be the one that says to the client, I don't want my name associated to it. Because if somebody thinks that I worked on it, even though I wasn't the shooter and I wasn't in charge of the audio, my reputation is still on the line. So yeah, I feel like that's really the only way to deal with it, because we're only as good as our reputation. And the last thing we need to do is get fired or never to get called back again. So thanks, Randall. Really appreciate it. You always have the best answers, making money, not views. Yeah, I mean, which is really why, my channel is kind of what my channel is. You guys are the reason why I keep putting out content, because clearly I'm not getting rich off of content. So there we go. So I don't see any other questions here, but I think we should just catch up next week, and hopefully we continue to build this community. And if you guys enjoy this type of content, let me know. If you guys don't, please let me know, because there's no need for anyone to be tortured. I guess this is the best way to think about it. Let's see. Present to the moment. I think the question was aimed at paying attention to the person you're interviewing rather than daydreaming. Okay, so Billy, if in fact someone who is working as a crew member is not 100% devoted to the person that is being interviewed, that's a problem all of its own, and that crew member should get fired. If they were on my crew, they would never step foot on my set again. Let's see. Hey, Carlos, would you use two cameras in front of the subject to get a closer shot to the face, or would you crop into the image? So when we use Komodo for interviews, we're capturing in 6K. So the biggest thing there really is one camera is on 85 millimeters and the other camera is on 24 millimeters. So that gives us a lot of room to both recrop and then create enough separation between the two cameras. Because if you shoot, say, one camera at 35 millimeters and the other one at 50 millimeters, then they're too similar, and it just like takes you out of the story. So we don't like to do that. We'd like to use two different, two lenses higher or lower than whatever our main one is. And 85 millimeters, generally speaking, is always our A camera. And like I said, 24 is our B cam. So it really depends. If we're flying 3 cameras, then the third camera is generally on 35 millimeters. And that just helps us, get a wider variety of shots. So cool. All right, guys. I'm going to call it a night. It is 4:53 here, and I'm surprised Bert's not here already. She was here earlier. I thought for sure she'd be here. Maybe she didn't want to be on camera. I don't know. So catch up with you guys next week. Take care. Really appreciate you all. And again, Happy New Year. Let's keep rolling and building this community.